With the divorce decree still in my hand, my ex-husband was already taking his mistress home to celebrate. Right at that moment, my mother-in-law called her son, and I broke down in tears. "Son, is your ex-wife sending the money? That's $600 every month?" I was standing in front of the courthouse, the divorce paper still warm in my hand, the red stamp pressed onto it like a brand of fire. The evening wind blew through the corridor, carrying the smell of car exhaust and sun-scorched asphalt, while my heart was as calm as stagnant water. 10 years of marriage had vanished with a few signatures and a cold nod from the clerk. As soon as we walked out the door, Kenyatta, my ex-husband, who was walking beside me, hurriedly pulled his phone out of his pocket. His hands were trembling slightly, but his eyes were shining in a way I couldn't describe. He walked a few steps away, but I still heard every word. "Lanisha, it's done. I just signed the divorce papers. It's all clean. Come by the house tonight. We're celebrating." On the other end of the line, a young woman's voice, smooth as honey, laughed mischievously. "Really? That fast, baby? Well, I'm coming over tonight. From now on, I'm your woman full-time, right?" I was less than 10 feet away, listening to every sentence, feeling like I was watching a scene from a low-budget soap opera on an old TV. The only difference was that the betrayed protagonist in that scene was me. Kenyatta turned around with a slightly embarrassed expression, but without a shred of remorse. He put the phone in his pocket and cleared his throat lightly, trying to look calm. "Aziza, from now on, we go our separate ways. Don't overthink it. From now on, let everyone live the best they can. I wish you happiness." I looked him straight in the eyes and saw that my reflection had disappeared from them a long time ago. It was just that until today, in the courthouse courtyard, I hadn't wanted to admit it. I smiled, a smile as light as smoke. "Don't worry, I'll live very well, and you'll be fine too." With that said, I turned around and walked away without holding on, without crying, without making a scene. The screaming matches and insults that folks talk about didn't happen with me. Maybe because I had already felt all the pain I needed to feel over the last 6 months. That afternoon, around 3 o'clock, I was sitting in my office in a high-rise downtown. The sunlight fell slanted across my desk, illuminating the computer screen. I picked up the phone and dialed the bank's number with a strange calmness. "Hi, this is Aziza. I need you to help me with something. Starting today, I want to cancel all automatic transfers from my account." On the other end of the line was the familiar voice of the bank teller. "Sure, Ms. Aziza, let me confirm. All automatic transfers, including the living expenses for Ms. Leola of $600 a month, and the education fund for little Cairo of $800 a month?" I nodded slightly, even though I knew she couldn't see me. "Yes, exactly. Starting this month, cancel them all without exception." "All right. But Ms. Aziza, these transfers have been active for 3 years. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Please do it. Starting today, everything stops." I hung up and leaned back in my chair. The whole office suddenly fell into a strange silence. In my mind, the face of my mother-in-law, Ms. Leola, and the innocent face of little Cairo appeared. I felt a pang in my chest, but then it settled. I'm not a saint. I had loved. I had given everything. But when people consider your kindness as something natural, when they view the money you spend like water flowing from a tap, the time comes to stop. And that isn't being evil. It's simply returning the responsibility to where it belongs. While I was at the office signing emails and managing contracts with tranquility, somewhere else. In the townhouse, I had paid a large part to renovate. My mother-in-law, my ex-husband, his new woman, and my 8-year-old son were partying. It wasn't hard for me to imagine the scene. A bottle of cheap wine uncorked, the sound of the cork echoing in the living room. Little Cairo with eyes wide as saucers asking, "Grandma, why are we drinking wine? Is something fun happening, Daddy?" Kenyatta would stroke his son's head. "From now on, Mama Aziza and I will live apart. Ms. Lanisha will be your new mom. We're going to start a new, happier, and more comfortable life. Do you understand, son?" Lanisha would probably rest her head on Kenyatta's shoulder, laughing. Now we're a real family, baby. And little Cairo would surely look around confused, with a shadow of panic in his eyes. He was used to the sound of my footsteps in the kitchen, the smell of the dinner I cooked every night, my hand stroking his hair before sleep. Now all that would be replaced by a strange woman with cloying perfume. I closed my eyes and sighed. It's not that I didn't think about my son. It's just that sometimes, for others to understand the value of what they took for granted, you have to let them experience a life without you. 3 years ago, the first time I visited the old single-story house where my mother-in-law lived on the outskirts of the city, it was pouring rain. The tin roof had leaks, the walls were damp, and water seeped through the cracks. Miss Leola was sitting on a set of scratched wooden chairs with a budget notebook in her hand, frowning. Aziza, Kenyatta's father died young, and I only have a pension of $700. Everything is so expensive now. The medicine for my blood pressure, for the arthritis. Every month I'm tight. I'm ashamed to say it, but it's truly very hard to live like this. Back then, Kenyatta's salary was about $2,000. With the mortgage on the newly bought condo, daily expenses, and gas, he barely had anything left. He was sitting there with a gloomy face, helpless. I know, Mama, but with my check, after paying everything, I have nothing left. I listened from the side, feeling my heart shrink. That night, as we drove back home, we stopped at a soul food spot near the bridge. The rain kept drumming on the roof. Suddenly I said, "What if I take care of your mother? Every month I'll transfer her $600. That way she won't have to worry about medicine or groceries. You pay the mortgage and handle the rest. My income is higher than yours. I can carry more of the load." Kenyatta looked up with eyes full of emotion. He squeezed my hand tightly. "Aziza, are you serious? That's $600 a month. Doesn't that seem unfair to you?" I smiled. "It's no injustice. I can afford it. I'm her daughter-in-law. Taking care of my mother-in-law is normal. If she lives peacefully, you can work in peace. And I'll feel better too." That night at home, I sat in front of the computer, opened the bank account, and scheduled the automatic transfer. Every 15th of the month, the system would automatically transfer $600 from my account to Ms. Leola's. When I finished, I felt a warm joy, as if I had done the right thing. Just as I thought, only a few months later, my mother-in-law's appearance changed completely. She started buying better quality food, occasionally treating herself to organic milk or pecans. Little by little, she started going on trips with her church friends to casinos or cruises to the Bahamas. In those senior group tours, jars of expensive supplements and some new handbags appeared in her cabinet. In the neighborhood, she walked with her head held high and a radiant smile. My son is so good. Every month he gives me $600 for my expenses. The medicine, the food, the trips. He pays for it all. Her friends looked at her with admiration. How well Kenyatta turned out. How lucky to have a son who takes care of his mother like that. I heard those conversations once when I went to visit. Ms. Leola only mentioned her son. She never said the money was from her daughter-in-law. To her, the money her daughter-in-law earned already carried the family name, which meant it was her son's money. I was at the door with a bag of fruit I had just bought. Hearing it, I only smiled slightly, not bothering to correct her. Protecting my husband's pride in front of the neighbors and family was something I was already used to, just like with Cairo. When Cairo turned 3, I signed him up for swimming. At 5, I enrolled him in coding camp and then in piano lessons and art classes. I believed that if a black boy was given opportunities from a young age, he would grow up with more confidence and an open mind. Every month, his classes cost over $800, not counting clothes, shoes, books, and toys. Once Kenyatta complained, "Don't you think you're demanding too much of him? We aren't exactly rich." I just shook my head. "We might not be rich, but if we strive, our son won't have to go through the same struggles we did in the future. Education isn't something to skimp on, baby. If I can pay for it, I'll do it for him. In the end, the benefit will be his." Kenyatta stayed silent. Little by little, he got used to me covering all the major household expenses. To outsiders, Kenyatta was the pillar of the family, a man who took care of his wife, his son, and his mother. Nobody knew that behind that pillar were my sweat and sleepless nights, working with endless spreadsheets and tense investments tight as a violin string. Maybe that's why, when he started seeing me as a walking ATM, he dared to say those words that hurt me to this day. She only has money, but aside from that, she has nothing. I looked at the clock. The hands were almost marking 4. My life also seemed to have passed into a new stage. The divorce decree in my purse reminded me that starting today, everything had changed. I stroked the edge of my purse, telling myself in silence that there would be no more $600 transfers for Ms. Leola, nor any more $700 education funds transferred automatically to an account in Kenyatta's name. Whatever happened to me carrying everything so others could take the credit was over. Everyone had to assume their own responsibility. Tonight, maybe in that house, someone would uncork a bottle, someone would laugh, someone would toast to celebrate. Meanwhile, after work, I would go back to my small rental apartment, make myself a simple dinner. I would open the window to let the air in, watch the streetlights turn on, and calmly reorganize my life. I hadn't collapsed. I had just started a new chapter. That night, when I arrived at the small rental apartment at the end of an alley in the Arts District, it was already pitch black. The shadow of the trees in front of the door projected their silhouettes on the peeling wall, and the yellow light of a street lamp illuminated the damp concrete ground. I opened the door, and the smell of fresh paint, new wooden furniture, and sheets freshly washed with fabric softener invaded me. A strange but pleasant smell. This place was much smaller than the condo I shared with Kenyatta, but it was tidy, impeccable, and most importantly, everything inside I had chosen myself, without having to please anyone. I hung up my purse, turned on the kitchen light, and started making a quick bowl of pasta with some grilled chicken. A simple dinner for me alone, but for some reason, it was easier to swallow than the heavy meals in the old house, where I ate while listening to my mother-in-law's whispers and Kenyatta's complaints. The phone rang. On the screen appeared the words, "Cairo, son." My heart skipped a beat. I dried my hands on a cloth, quickly pressed to accept, and turned on the video call. My son's face appeared on the screen with his hair messy and his eyes red. Behind him was the familiar living room of the old house, the sofa I had paid for, the painting on the wall I had chosen myself. "Mama," his voice trembled, "why don't you sleep at home anymore? Daddy says you guys don't live together anymore. Is it that you don't love me anymore?" I tried to keep my voice steady, though I had a lump in my throat. "Cairo, I love you just the same as always. Nothing has changed. It's just that from now on, Daddy and I will live in different houses. But I will always be your mother. Every weekend I'll come to pick you up so we can go out. Where do you want to go? I'll take you wherever you want." "Okay." The boy pressed his lips together, and tears rolled down his cheeks. "I don't want to. I want you to sleep in the room next door. I want you to wake me up in the morning for school. Come home, Mama." I turned my face away. I didn't want him to see my red eyes. "Son, there are things adults have to do, and they aren't always how we'd like. For now, listen to Daddy, eat well, and be good at school. I need a little time to reorganize my life. When you're older, you'll understand. I promise you that wherever I am, I'll always be your support." "But Ms. Lanisha is my new mom?" The unexpected question froze me. That fast, Kenyatta had introduced that woman to our son. "No," I said slowly. "Cairo only has one mother, and that's me. You can respect other people and be polite, but in your heart, you have to know who carried you in her belly and who has taken care of you since you were a baby. Do you understand me?" The boy nodded, still sobbing. I tried to calm him down a bit more. I told him to go to sleep soon and hung up. The phone screen turned off, and the room plunged back into silence. I sat for a good while in the small wooden chair by the window. I looked down at the alley below, where some cars passed, their lights leaving bright trails. In my mind, images of the past returned again and again, overlapping as if someone were rewinding the movie of my life. The day Kenyatta and I got married, the city was in the dead of winter. It was a cold that soaked into your bones. The wedding was held in a small neighborhood venue. It wasn't fancy, but it was cozy. I wore a white wedding dress rented in a hurry, with my face too made up and my lips redder than usual. Kenyatta was beside me on the stage, our hands intertwined, his eyes shining. "Aziza, I'm not rich, and I don't know how to speak pretty, but I promise I'll always protect you. I won't let you suffer." And I believed him. I believed him to the point of being willing to use all my savings for the down payment on our first condo, to leave my parents' house to move in with his family, striving to be a good wife and a good daughter-in-law. Back then, I had just entered an investment firm. My salary wasn't very high, but I had a promising future. Kenyatta worked a city job with a fixed schedule from 8 to 5 and a salary of about $2,500 plus some bonuses. He often told me, "You have talent, go for it. Don't limit yourself. I'll take care of the house." It sounded like sacrifice, but little by little, that supposed pillar became the excuse for him to stay stagnant while I didn't stop. At first, Ms. Leola appreciated me a lot. She saw that I was polite, that I brought her gifts, and that I knew how to run the house. She bragged to everyone. "My daughter-in-law is very smart. She works in finance. She makes good money. It's a blessing for our family." But that appreciation didn't last long. When my husband started complaining to his mother that I arrived late, that I spent weekends on my laptop, that I traveled constantly for work, Ms. Leola's look toward me changed. Once during dinner, she let slip a sentence that seemed innocent but cut like a knife. "A woman who makes too much money is hard to handle. If she later looks down on her husband, he shouldn't complain." I froze and looked at her. She continued eating her greens calmly, as if she were talking about the weather. Kenyatta looked away as if he hadn't heard anything. That night, when we were in bed, I asked him, "What did you tell your mother to make her think I looked down on you?" Kenyatta turned his back to me and muttered, "I just told her you work a lot, and that sometimes I have to manage alone at home. What she thinks is her business. You're too sensitive." "But it's not true. I still take care of the house. I still take care of your mother. I haven't abandoned anyone." "Well," he sighed, "you make the money. You have the power. My mother is old. She has old-fashioned ideas. Don't pay her any mind." It seemed like he was defending me, but in every word I noticed a touch of bitterness, a bit of wounded male pride. Phrases like that appeared more frequently. I would come back from a work trip with gifts for the whole family. Cairo would jump for joy. My mother-in-law would accept them and drop a, "I don't know why you don't save a little for your husband and son, always buying things." Kenyatta would laugh. "It's her money, Mama, don't worry." But when we were alone, he would sigh. "Try to control yourself a little. Seeing you so obsessed with making money pressures me. When I go out with my boys, they all tell me how lucky I am with a rich wife, but it doesn't feel like luck to me." In that moment, I tried to smooth things over. I started yielding the floor to him in social gatherings, consulting him on things in front of others, praising his effort, calling him the pillar of the family. I thought that way he would feel less insecure, but it turned out my condescension only made him get used to receiving credit for my effort without needing to strive more. And then came the money issue. Since I offered to give his mother $600 a month and cover most of Cairo's education expenses, Kenyatta practically disengaged from those payments. His salary went mainly to the mortgage and his personal expenses. I didn't keep score, but I started feeling uncomfortable when I heard my mother-in-law brag to the neighbors. "My Kenyatta is so good. Every month he sends me $600 plus gifts and medicine. You have to be very lucky to have a son like that." Once, while washing dishes in the kitchen, I heard the neighbors say from the living room, "Your son is a phenomenon. He supports his wife, his son, and takes care of his mother, too. Nowadays, it's hard to find men like that." My mother-in-law laughed out loud. "Well, it's just that he's very hard-working because his wife only knows how to argue." My hand tensed, holding the plate. The soap slid cold over my skin. I was about to go out and tell them that I sent that money, not just Kenyatta, but in the end, like so many other times, I stayed quiet. quiet to keep the peace, thinking that as a daughter-in-law, I shouldn't seek recognition, believing that if I was sincere, sooner or later they would understand. Now looking back, I realized that silence was the first step to putting myself in an unfair situation. I stayed quiet, and my mother-in-law got used to considering my money as her son's. I stayed quiet, and Kenyatta got used to receiving the praise without feeling guilty. I stayed quiet, and in the end, when he brought another woman home, he continued thinking he wasn't at fault because his wife had money but didn't know how to be a wife. That night, in my new apartment, lying on the single bed, the ceiling spotless white, the light dim, I stared into the void with my mind in a whirlwind. My marriage had crumbled because of those small cracks, not just because of the appearance of some Lanisha, but it's true that without a third person, maybe I would have still had the patience to keep patching it up, to keep deceiving myself, to keep silent. Thinking about it, I sigh and ask myself, if I could go back, would I choose another path? I'm not sure. I only know that, although late, I managed to stop in time. It's just that the price to pay isn't only a divorce decree, but also my son's tears and the panic of a family that for a long time got used to living at my expense. And I still didn't know that in a few days my mother-in-law's call would arrive, crying because her ex-daughter-in-law no longer transferred the $600 as if it were an obligation. I thought that after moving to the small apartment things would calm down, like a lake after rain. But it turned out the undercurrents of my newly broken marriage were still very strong, waiting for just a little friction to churn with fury. The first Sunday after the divorce, I got up early intending to clean the house and then go to the grocery store to buy some food. The sun was barely peeking from behind the buildings. Its rays slipped through the curtains in long strips, creating an atmosphere so peaceful it made you think life had stopped hitting you. I was making myself a coffee when the phone rang insistently. On the screen, the words, "Mama Kenyatta," made my heart shrink. I hesitated a few seconds before answering. "Aziza, daughter." Ms. Leola's voice trembled, as if she had just been crying. "Why haven't I received the $600 you send me this month yet?" I closed my eyes. It was exactly as I expected. "Hello, Ms. Leola. I canceled the transfer. Starting this month, I no longer have the responsibility to send you money." There was a silence of a few seconds on the other end, and then her voice rose in a shout as if her last support had been snatched away. "What are you saying? What do you mean you're not sending it anymore? You've been sending it every month for 3 years. If you cut it off suddenly, how am I going to live?" I tried to keep a soft tone. "Ms. Leola, I've already divorced Kenyatta. I'm not his wife anymore. His living expenses correspond to him now. Kenyatta doesn't have money. He has to pay the mortgage and take care of Cairo. If you don't send it to me, what am I going to live on? Are you that cruel, Aziza?" The question hurt me like a stab. I had treated her with all the affection and responsibility of a daughter. And now, just because I stopped supporting her whole family, I became the villain. "Ms. Leola, I've taken care of you for 3 years. You know how much I appreciate you, but I can't keep supporting my ex-husband's family after the divorce. This matter you have to discuss with Kenyatta. I can't talk to him. He says the money from before was given by him, that now he's very tight, and that's why he stopped it temporarily for a month, and that if I want you to keep sending it, I should ask you directly that he's not getting involved." I burst out laughing, a laugh so bitter that even I was surprised. It was my money, and he said it was his. I've been sending it for 3 years, and he hasn't put in a dime, and that's what he told her. Ms. Leola stayed quiet. Maybe she felt a little guilty, but immediately she went back to sobbing. "But if you don't send it to me, I'm going to starve. I'm old. Who's going to take care of me?" "You still have your son," I answered clearly. "Kenyatta says he can't handle everything, that since you earn more money, if you love me, you should keep taking care of me." That sentence was what really froze my blood. Kenyatta not only passed the responsibility to me, but he wanted me to become an ATM for life for his family. Even divorced, he wanted to keep depending on me, enjoying my effort as if it were normal. I only said one thing. "Ms. Leola, from now on, Money matters need to be discussed with Kenyatta, with his permission. And I hung up without letting her say anything else. As soon as I hung up, I leaned on the table and took a deep breath. Without meaning to, tears started to flow. I wasn't crying for the reproaches. I was crying because I had just realized a painful truth. During those 3 years, they had never seen my help as a gesture of affection. They only saw it as an obligation. The phone rang again. This time it was Kenyatta. I wiped my tears and answered, "Aziza, why did you cut off my mother's money? She's been causing a scene all morning." I asked him directly, "What did you tell her to make her think the money from these 3 years was yours?" Kenyatta hesitated a few seconds and then tried to excuse himself. "Well, I just didn't want her to think she was a burden to you, so I took responsibility to keep up appearances." "Oh, and saying that since I earn more I should take care of her is also to keep up my appearance?" Kenyatta went mute. A moment later, he changed his tone with a touch of anger. "With this, you're making life very difficult for my mother. $600 a month is nothing to you. You make $5,000 or $6,000 a month." "It's true, it's nothing," I said, "but the problem is that I'm not your wife anymore. I have no reason to keep supporting your whole family." Kenyatta breathed with difficulty, as if he had run out of arguments. "You're too selfish, Aziza. You've lived 10 years with my family, and now you turn your back on us suddenly." I laughed this time with bitterness. "Repeat to me who turned their back first." Kenyatta stayed silent like a stone. I continued. "You abandoned your family, your wife, your son. For another woman, you brought her home the same night of the divorce, and you want me to keep sending money to your mother. On what grounds?" Kenyatta whispered, "It's just that my mother was already used to it. If you cut her off suddenly, she's going to be upset." "Well, get her used to the new situation. I'm not responsible anymore." I was about to hang up when I heard him shout, "Aziza, don't think you're going to get off scot-free. You still have Cairo. Do you really want to abandon your son?" I closed my eyes. Every time he ran out of options, he brought up our son as a shield. "Don't use our son to pressure me. I would never abandon Cairo, but raising him is the responsibility of both of us, not just mine." Kenyatta said, almost screaming, "But you know I can't support him. You know my income perfectly well." "Then when you signed for custody, what were you thinking?" I asked him slowly. Kenyatta was speechless. "Or maybe you thought I would keep paying for everything and you would just put your name on it to look good." Kenyatta couldn't say anything else. I only heard his heavy breathing, as if he had just realized something he had never dared to think before. I had really left his life. I hung up. The quiet morning had disappeared, but in the middle of that chaos, I saw something very clear. When you leave is when people understand the value of everything you did. That afternoon, I went for a walk in the city park. The wind blew strongly, and the small waves on the lake reflected the golden light of the sun. I sat on a familiar stone bench where many afternoons I had taken Cairo to fly kites. Under the shade of a bare tree, I suddenly felt my heart lighter. The phone rang again. This time it was a message from Cairo's teacher, Ms. Rainey. "Aziza, these last few days Cairo cries a lot in class. He asks why Daddy and Mama don't live together anymore. Could you dedicate some time to talk to him this weekend?" I read the message and felt a sharp pain, as if someone squeezed my heart. I replied, "Thank you. This weekend, I'll pick him up." After sending the message, I looked at the shimmering lake in front of me and told myself, from now on, my life might lack a man, but it can't lack courage, and Cairo will never lack a mother. Somewhere else in the city, at that moment, perhaps in the old house where I had contributed to renovating every wall, disorder was starting to reign due to bills, school tuition, all those things that before nobody thought about. And I, for the first time in a long time, felt that I was truly breathing. That night, I had just showered and was drying my hair when the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't my mother-in-law, it wasn't Kenyatta, but the number of the learning center where Cairo studied piano. I paused for a moment, although I was prepared. When everything piles up at once, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. I answered, Ms. Aziza, I'm calling from Cairo Center. The tuition for the new term hasn't been paid yet. Normally you pay it in advance, so I'm calling to inform you. I took a deep breath. Hi, I'm not the custodial parent of the child anymore. From now on, for all his education expenses, please contact his father, Mr. Kenyatta. On the other end of the line, there was a pause of surprise. Oh, okay. We'll contact Mr. Kenyatta then. I hung up with a sensation of relief and pain at the same time, as if someone had cut a rope that had tied me for years. I knew it would hurt, but I had to do it. Half an hour later, I received a message from Kenyatta. Don't dump everything on me. The tuition is over $300. I can't get it. Pay this term and I promise starting next one, I'll handle it. I read the message and laughed, a tired and slightly bitter laugh. During 3 years, I had paid dozens of fees every month. He had never asked me if I could get the money. Now he said he couldn't. Wasn't it ridiculous? I replied with a single sentence. You asked for custody. Fulfill your responsibility. Kenyatta called immediately with an irritated voice. You're making it very hard for me. My checks are tight. After paying everything, what do I have left? If you love your son, you have to think about him. I answered calmly. If you love your son, you have to work double or triple to take care of him. You can't keep dumping him on me. Kenyatta fell silent for a few seconds and then dropped his usual line when he ran out of arguments. Aziza, why are you so insensitive? I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of exhaustion. Am I insensitive or are you a user? Think about it. I hung up before hearing anything else. The following days, I received more calls from the art class, from the basketball camp, all with the same message. The tuition wasn't paid, or the child was missing because nobody took him. I knew that in the old condo, things were starting to spiral out of control like a tangled ball of yarn. I didn't feel satisfied, but I didn't give in either. I understood perfectly that if I took charge of everything again, they would never change. And that was when I received a message from the teacher. Today, Cairo couldn't focus. He says last night his father spoke badly to him and made him cry. He says he misses his mother hugging him to sleep. I read the message over and over. I felt a knot in my heart. I grabbed my jacket, ready to call an Uber and go pick him up from school when the phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. Ms. Aziza, I'm a neighbor from downstairs. Well, from Mr. Kenyatta's house. My name is Booker. I'm calling so you know that this afternoon someone came and put a boot on Mr. Kenyatta's car. It seems he owes money for the parking garage from way back. And inside the house, shouting could be heard, him arguing with some Lanisha. I thanked him briefly and hung up. I stood still in my small apartment. The evening light slipped through the window, gilding the floor. I don't know why. Suddenly I felt completely empty. All the things that had worried me, that I had feared, that I had strived to avoid, were happening one after another. But not to me, but to him. Maybe fate is also fair in its own way. That evening, I went to pick up Cairo from school, as the teacher, Ms. Rainey, had asked me. As soon as he saw me, he ran toward me and hugged me tightly, as if he feared I would disappear. Mama, I don't want to be in that house anymore. Daddy is always angry and Ms. Lanisha scolds me. I just want to come back with you. I picked him up in my arms and kissed his soft hair. The smell of childhood sweat shrank my heart. I took him to the city park. We sat on the usual bench, and I bought him an ice cream. Cairo, you'll live with Daddy, but on weekends I'll take you out. I haven't abandoned you, but now Daddy is going through a tough time. He has to learn to take care of you. You're a child. You have to understand. When you're older, you'll realize your father has to assume his responsibility with you. The boy rested his head on my shoulder. Mama, then you aren't mad at me? I hugged him and patted his back. I'm only mad at the adults. I've never been mad at you. A gust of wind blew, and the waves of the lake shone like silver. I sat there for a long time until Cairo fell asleep in my lap, and I watched the water thinking about the years past. Late at night, when I had already taken Cairo back to Kenyatta's condo and was getting ready to leave, I ran into Lanisha at the door. Her bright pink pajamas were jarring under the hallway light. She crossed her arms with an annoyed voice. "Miss Aziza, can you stop teaching your son to turn against me? He won't stop crying, asking for his mother. I'm fed up." I looked directly at her calmly. "I don't teach him to turn against anyone. I just tell him the truth. But if he misses me, if he wants to come back to me, I do enough by taking care of him." I laughed. "Nobody asked you to take care of my son. You've barely been living here a week. Please don't talk as if you were his mother." Lanisha blushed and her voice sharpened. "Are you jealous? Anyway, you're already the past." I didn't get angry. I just said quietly, "Congratulations. You've already seen your future. An irresponsible man, a child with emotional problems, and a mother-in-law used to being supported. Be happy with your choice." Lanisha was speechless. I turned around and left without looking back. That night, returning to my small apartment, I received a message from an unknown number. "Aziza, I'm an old co-worker of Kenyatta's. I'm telling you for real, he's very depressed. Everyone in the office has noticed, but everyone says it's the price he has to pay." I read it and didn't reply. I left the phone on the table, turned on the bedside lamp, and went to bed. Maybe life didn't give me a perfect marriage, but it gave me a lesson. A man who doesn't know how to value you isn't worth keeping, and a woman who knows how to walk away is truly strong. I closed my eyes. For the first time in many months, I slept without having nightmares. Monday morning, as soon as I entered the office, before turning on the computer, the phone started vibrating nonstop. It was the number of Cairo's old daycare, the one he had attended when he was smaller, and whose parent meetings I always tried to go to, no matter how busy I was. I was a bit surprised, but I answered. "I'm calling to confirm the meeting with the parents about little Cairo's psychological state. Yesterday we sent an invitation letter to the father, Mr. Kenyatta, but he told us that anything needed to be consulted with you." I rubbed my eyes. The day was just starting, and problems were already arriving. "Hi, I haven't received anything. When is the meeting?" "This afternoon at 4. Lately Cairo cries a lot and has trouble concentrating, so the counselor wants to speak with the family." I thanked her and hung up. I felt a pang of pain that I had tried to suppress since I saw Cairo on the park bench. Children are very sensitive. A small change in routine, an argument between adults, and they get disoriented. And in this case, it was a divorce, a change of caregiver, the appearance of a third person. I sat in front of the computer for a good while, unable to concentrate on the report. In the end, I asked my boss for permission to leave early. That afternoon, I arrived at the school on time. The teacher, Ms. Rainey, who had been with the class for almost 3 years, received me with a look of concern. "Ms. Aziza, honestly, Cairo is in a state of instability. He speaks little, cries easily. The other day, in the middle of an exercise, he dropped his pencil and stared into space." I swallowed hard. "Tell me the truth. Has he said anything about what happens at home?" Ms. Rainey hesitated a moment and then answered in a low voice. "Cairo says Ms. Lanisha often takes his toys away with the excuse of teaching him discipline. He also says that at night his father is always tired and in a bad mood, and that since his mother isn't home anymore, he doesn't want to sleep." I took a deep breath. A sharp pain went through my chest. "Please advise me. I'm afraid the boy is suffering." The truth is that children need stability. If Mr. Kenyatta can't organize his time to take care of him, or if the environment at home is too tense, maybe you should consider the child living with the person who has greater emotional stability. Her hint was very clear. I stayed silent, but inside me something activated, like the metallic sound of a spring. It was time to think about my son's well-being, not anyone's pride. Leaving the school, I took Cairo to dinner. As soon as he saw me, he rushed at me as if he feared I was going to disappear. "Mama, can you stay with me tonight?" "I still have to take you to Daddy's house, but on the weekend I'll come pick you up." I don't like that house. Ms. Lanisha takes my things and scolds me, and Daddy says I'm annoying. I stopped and crouched down to hug him. Cairo, you aren't annoying to anyone. You are the most valuable thing I have. I said that phrase with all the love I felt, but my heart filled with doubts. If this situation continued, Cairo would suffer even more. That night, I took Cairo back to Kenyatta's condo. Entering, the scene shrank my heart. The house was messy, with clothes thrown on the sofa and takeout containers on the table. Kenyatta was sitting in front of the computer, eyes red, looking tired and stressed. Lanisha was lying on the sofa with a face mask. Seeing me, she looked at me with disdain. "Why are you bringing him so late? I still have to put him to bed." I didn't bother to answer. Cairo ran to his room, and I stood looking at what was once my home. "Kenyatta, I spoke with the teacher. Cairo is in crisis. Don't you realize?" Kenyatta rubbed his forehead with exhaustion. "I know, but I'm overwhelmed. Too much work. My mother nagging me. Lanisha angry. Because you come and go." "I come and go for my son. I'm his mother. I have the right." Kenyatta looked at me with a mixture of confusion and fear in his eyes. I left the bag on the table. "I'm asking you seriously. Can you take care of your son in every sense, financially, with your time, emotionally?" Kenyatta kept quiet, lowering his gaze like someone who has just realized that the rope tightening around him exceeds his ability to endure. I continued. "If you can't, we have to sit down and renegotiate custody." "Do you want to take my son away?" Kenyatta jumped up. His voice was loud, but his hands shook. "No," I said slowly. "I want to save my son from the chaos us adults have created." As soon as I finished speaking, Lanisha got up from the sofa. "Don't play the saint. You want to take him and dump all the responsibility on Kenyatta? Some mother who abandons her husband and her house so easily." I turned and looked directly at her. "You have no right to speak to me about this. Kenyatta and I divorced for something you know very well." Kenyatta turned pale in the middle, not knowing whom to defend. I looked at him, the man who once promised to protect me, now reduced to a tired shadow in the middle of a chaotic house. I said nothing else. I headed to the door, and before leaving I just said, "I give you 3 days to think about it. If Cairo's situation doesn't improve, I'll speak with the court to request custody." Kenyatta stood there without stopping me, without saying anything, without daring to look me in the eyes. That night, I walked back to my apartment. It was cold, but my head was burning. The road ahead seemed endless, but every step was firmer, heavier, more determined. I was no longer the naive woman who believed sacrifice would be rewarded. I had paid with my youth, but now I had a son who needed solid support. I couldn't afford to waver. Arriving at my room and opening the door, the phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number, but I knew who it was from. "Mama, when can I come back to live with you?" I sat on the edge of the bed. Tears ran without me being able to stop them. In that moment, I didn't have an answer. But in my heart, a decision had formed, as clear as the moon in the night sky. I would recover custody of my son, no matter how far I had to go, whom I had to fight, or how many difficulties I had to face, because only where the mother is Cairo's home. 3 days later, I received a call from the teacher, Ms. Rainey, mid-morning. Her voice was low, but full of concern. "Ms. Aziza, today Cairo cried during the whole class. He says last night his father yelled at him and closed his room door, and that Ms. Lanisha went I don't know where. He stayed waiting at the door until late." I put down the pen, feeling a knot in my stomach, as if someone squeezed me tight. "Ms. Rainey, at the end of the day, I'll go pick him up. Please, stay with him a little. Of course, honestly, I think you should reconsider custody. The child needs the stability that he doesn't have at his father's house." I thanked her and hung up. I leaned back in the chair, feeling how everything piled up at once. The exhaustion of a broken marriage, the disappointment in the man who was once my husband, the prolonged sadness seeing my son suffer what he didn't deserve. But in the middle of that whirlwind of emotions, Something shone clearly: my responsibility. In the afternoon, I went to the school. Cairo, seeing me, ran to hug me with his face still stained with tears. "Mama, Mama, yesterday I was really scared. Daddy was yelling. Ms. Lanisha closed the room door. I knocked and nobody opened." I hugged him like I was hugging a piece of my heart. "Cairo, from now on, you won't go through that again. I promise you." The boy rested his head on my shoulder and nodded slightly. I took him to eat and then to my apartment. It was the first time he stayed to sleep at my house since the divorce. Entering the room, he looked around a little surprised, but with a very calm expression. "How pretty your house is, Mama. Mama, can I sleep here?" I stroked his head. "Of course, tonight you sleep with me." The boy smiled, a pure smile I hadn't seen in a long time. I called Kenyatta to inform him. He answered after several rings with a tired voice, as if he had just had a long argument. "Is Cairo with you?" "Yes. What happened last night at your house?" Kenyatta sighed. His voice broke. I was very stressed. My mother wouldn't stop calling me to throw the money thing in my face. Lanisha got angry because I didn't let her manage Cairo's schooling. I yelled without meaning to. "But your son isn't your punching bag," I told him directly without holding back. Kenyatta stayed silent a moment and then said, "I'm sorry, but bring the boy home. He has to sleep here." I looked at Cairo, who was sitting on the rug playing with his Legos, with a peaceful expression he didn't have at Kenyatta's house. "No," I replied. "Tonight he stays with me." Kenyatta shouted, "You're making things difficult for me on purpose." "No, I'm protecting my son's mental health. Aziza, don't go too far." I laughed, a laugh sadder than amused. "Kenyatta, do you want me to sue you? The court will ask, who offers a more stable environment to our son? Who has taken care of him for 8 years? Who leaves him crying every night scared to death?" Kenyatta went mute. I clearly heard his heavy breathing on the other end of the line, like that of someone who has just realized that what they thought was an advantage has become a burden. "I'm going to request a change of custody," I continued. "The 3 days I gave you to think have passed. Now is the time to act." "You can't do that." His voice trembled. It really trembled. "I don't want to lose my son. Cairo is all I have." "Well then, prove you can take care of him. And if not, don't stop me." I hung up before he could say anything else. For the first time, my hand didn't shake doing it. That night, I bathed Cairo, dried his hair, and put him to bed next to me in the single bed. He wrapped his little arms around my waist and whispered, "Mama, I like sleeping with you more. Nobody shouts here." I hugged him, inhaling the smell of kid shampoo, that smell that makes adults want to stand firm no matter how tired they are. "Sleep. I'm here." But I was the one who couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling with my mind full of questions. Why, after the divorce, did I still have to fight so much? Why does a mother have to prove every little detail to be able to hug her son and sleep in peace? But then I reminded myself that the why didn't matter. What mattered was what I had to do. The next morning, I took Cairo to school and then went directly to the office of a lawyer a friend had recommended. The lawyer was named Thaddeus. He was of slight build, but with a sharp and very perceptive gaze. "You want to request a change of custody for your son?" he asked. "Yes, I have financial stability. My son is suffering psychologically living with his father. I have proof from the teacher and the child study center." The lawyer nodded. "Your case has a solid basis to request the change of custody. The court will consider the living environment, the economic situation, and the psychological state of the child. If you have more proof of the instability in the other family, your chances are very high." "Proof? I think I have plenty." I told him the story of Kenyatta bringing the third person home, his mother's financial dependence, the nights Cairo had to wait at the bedroom door because his parents argued. Telling it, I felt a pang of pain, because all those small things added up were enough to hurt a child. Lawyer Thaddeus said, "Prepare yourself. Custody disputes are never easy, but I think you have a good chance of winning." I sighed, half exhausted, half relieved. As long as my son lives in peace, I'll do whatever is necessary. The lawyer looked at me and smiled slightly. Any mother who says that is the strongest mother. In the afternoon, I picked up Cairo early. He ran toward me, happier than the day before, but still with the caution of a child who has lost the feeling of security. "Mama, tonight I sleep with you again, right?" I crouched down and gave him a kiss on the cheek. "Tonight you sleep with me." The boy smiled radiantly and hugged me as if he were hugging his little world. While we walked to the car, Cairo held my hand tightly. His hand so small warmed my heart like a flame. I knew I had chosen the right path, a difficult path, but right, and I would follow it to the end. Monday morning, while I was getting ready to take Cairo to school, the phone rang insistently. It was Kenyatta's number. I thought about not answering, but Cairo was beside me, looking at me expectantly, as if wanting to know my reaction. I answered reluctantly. Kenyatta's voice was hoarse and tired. "Aziza, please, listen to me. Can you let me see the boy for a moment, just a few minutes?" I looked at Cairo, who was tying his shoelaces. His little hands tried to make a bow as if he were an adult. I didn't want my son to witness his father crying or begging again. Children shouldn't see adults fall apart, and much less be dragged into their emotional entanglements. "Kenyatta, today he has school. In the afternoon I'll video call you so you can talk to him." There was silence on the other end, and then he begged again. "Don't file the lawsuit. I'm trying to fix it. Give me a little more time." I squeezed the phone, feeling an exhaustion running from my chest to my stomach. "Kenyatta, things have gone too far. I'm not going to change my mind. We both know it's best for Cairo." I hung up without waiting for his response. Cairo looked at me. "Mama, what did Daddy say?" I stroked his head. "Nothing, Cairo, don't worry. Daddy will see you later. Now let's go to school." Cairo nodded, but his expression wasn't entirely relaxed. I took his hand and led him to the car, noticing his little hand was colder than usual. Children are the reflection of adults' instability, a transparent mirror that knows not how to hide anything. In the afternoon, I picked up my son earlier than usual. We went to the community pool. Cairo loved the water since he was little. He had the habit of floating on the surface like a little fish. He swam a couple of laps, and then sat on the edge of the pool beside me, swinging his feet in the blue water. "Mama, if the judge lets me live with you forever, will Daddy get sad?" That question hurt me like a knife. Cairo, love isn't divided into who has more or less. I love you. Daddy loves you. The decision of who you live with is so you have the best life possible, the most peaceful one. If Daddy gets sad or not is something we adults have to overcome. Cairo rested his hands behind him and looked at the sky. "But it's just that Daddy and Ms. Lanisha argue a lot. I don't like being there." I pulled him close so he would rest his head on my shoulder. "You don't have to put up with anything you don't like. I'm here." Cairo looked up. His eyes shone as if he feared my words were just comfort. "For real, Mama, you aren't going to leave me anymore." I hugged him tight, with a lump in my throat that prevented me from speaking for a few seconds. "No, I will never leave you. Never. Not now or ever." Cairo wrapped his arms around my waist, small but firm, as if he feared I would disappear. And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. However difficult it was, I would fight to return my son to the life that had cared for him for so many years. That night, when Cairo was already fast asleep, I received a message from lawyer Thaddeus. "Aziza, the court has admitted the request for change of custody. It is expected that in 2 weeks we will have the first conciliation hearing." I put down the phone with a heavy heart. 2 weeks wasn't a long time, but it was enough for everything to turn upside down, especially with Kenyatta as an opponent, a man who reacted by instinct when he felt his pride hurt. I leaned back in the chair looking at the living room of my small apartment. It wasn't spacious or luxurious like the old house, but it was clean. It was cozy, full of books, light, and without shouts, without the smell of alcohol, without the shadow of another woman coming and going. My house, Cairo's house, and I would protect it at all costs. 2 days later, I received news from Ms. Rainey. Cairo had cried in class again. He was afraid that if the judge didn't let him live with me, he would have to go back to the same situation as before. I went to the school immediately. Cairo was sitting alone in the hallway, hugging his backpack as if holding on to something to protect himself. Seeing me, he ran toward me with a trembling voice. "Mama, is it true I have to go back with Daddy? I don't want to." I knelt at his level. "Cairo, listen to me. We'll talk about this together. Don't worry all by yourself." "But the teacher said the judge asks a lot of things." I stroked his face. "You just have to tell the truth. Where do you want to live? Nobody is going to force you to do anything." Cairo bit his lip hard and nodded, but the fear remained in his eyes. I put him in the car. Sitting in the back seat, he grabbed my sleeve. "Mama, if Daddy cries, what do I do?" It hurt so much I almost cried. "Cairo, it's not your responsibility to make adults happy or sad. You just have to say what you feel is right. I'll handle the rest." That night, I was awake for a long time. All the memories of my marriage of almost 10 years, including the moments when Kenyatta had been kind, tender, when he had said he would strive for the family, came back to my mind intermittently. I had loved that man with all the trust of my youth, but love cannot save someone who isn't willing to pay a price. And that marriage only had one result I had to face. I had to be the strongest so my son wouldn't sink. A week of latent tension passed. I observed Cairo closely. He was happier at my house, but he still jumped at loud adult voices. He still turned looking for someone when he heard men's footsteps in the hallway. A child's wounds take a lifetime to heal. They aren't fixed with a few days of peace. Saturday afternoon, I took Cairo to the barber shop. Sitting in front of the mirror, his big round eyes seemed to look at the him of a few months ago. A boy who laughed a lot, who talked a lot, who believed everything his mother told him. "You look so handsome," I told him, stroking his freshly cut hair. Cairo laughed and his little dimple appeared. "Mama, you look pretty too." I laughed as if someone had stitched my heart with skill. Back home, at a red light, Cairo looked out the window and said something that froze me. "Mama, when I move to live with you, can we buy a new desk? I want to stay here a long time." I gripped the steering wheel. "Of course, I'll buy you the most beautiful desk." Cairo rested his head on my shoulder. His voice was a whisper. I really want that day to come. That night, tucking Cairo in, I gave him a kiss on the forehead and made myself a promise, not in silence, but like a clear oath. Even if the trial was difficult, even if Kenyatta opposed, even if my ex-mother-in-law bothered me, even if society judged a woman fighting for custody of her son after a divorce, I would do it to the end, because this wasn't a war between two adults, it was the path to save a child's childhood. The morning of the first conciliation hearing, it was overcast. The sky was gray, as if predicting a heavy day. I made breakfast for Cairo and took him to school earlier than usual. Before getting out of the car, he took my hand. His voice was a whisper, as if fearing to disturb the sky. "Mama, are you going to take long? When I come back, you'll be at home waiting for me." I hugged him. "Cairo, I'm not going anywhere. You finish your classes and come home with me. I'll always be here." Cairo nodded, but opening the car door to get out, he hesitated a little. I only breathed relieved when I saw him enter class. My 8-year-old son already carried more than I wanted him to know. That forced me to be even stronger. The district courthouse was on an old street with some bare trees in the courtyard. I entered breathing deeply to stay serene. Lawyer Thaddeus was already waiting for me with a thick folder in his hand. He asked me in a low voice, "Are you okay, Aziza?" "I'm okay, just a little worried about Cairo." The weaker he is, the firmer you have to be. When both parties meet, emotions can make you doubt, but you already have everything prepared. I nodded, but my heart kept beating fast. I knew that in a moment I would have to face Kenyatta, my ex-mother-in-law, and possibly accusations and looks of reproach I was already used to. But unlike before, today I wasn't in the position of the victim. I was here for my son. Kenyatta arrived almost on time with a wrinkled shirt, dark circles under his eyes, and messy hair, like someone who hasn't slept in days. He avoided my gaze, but sitting down his hands trembled slightly. My ex-mother-in-law, Miss Leola, who accompanied him, shot me a long, cold look, as if I were the cause of her family's ruin. "You don't think about the boy, do you, Aziza?" she muttered before the hearing started. "I raised him since he was little. I know he needs his father." I looked directly at Ms. Leola. "What I'm doing is for Cairo." She tried to reply, but her lawyer signaled her to calm down. We were called into the room. The conciliation hearing was held in a small room with an antique but well-kept wooden table. The mediator, a middle-aged woman with a soft but firm voice. "Ms. Aziza Garcia has requested a change of custody. We will hear her reasons first." I stood up, keeping my voice low but clear. "I request the change of custody because the living environment with Mr. Kenyatta is not stable. My son constantly hears arguments between him and his current partner. He is suffering psychologically with symptoms of anxiety, insomnia, and fear of loud noises. I presented the reports from the teacher and the psychologist. Cairo is 8 years old and is perfectly capable of expressing his wishes. He says he wants to live with me." Kenyatta jumped up. "That's not true. I love Cairo. I worry about him. It's just that lately I've had many difficulties." The mediator raised her hand. "Mr. Kenyatta, in a moment you will be able to present your version." I continued. "I have financial stability. My income is 4 times higher than Mr. Kenyatta's. I have my own apartment, a quiet environment, without strangers coming and going. It is the place where Cairo has expressed his desire to live." Kenyatta looked at me with a mixture of desperation and bitterness. "Aziza, why have you changed so much? You weren't like this before." I turned to him. "I changed seeing my son cry every night." The whole room fell silent. It was Kenyatta's turn. He lowered his head and said slowly, "I know I messed up, but I love my son. I really love him. If she keeps custody, I'll be left alone." Hearing that phrase, I felt pity and at the same time injustice. Nobody is taking your son away from you. I'm just saving him from a bad environment. My ex-mother-in-law intervened again. "Cairo has always been with his father, with my family. Aziza is being too hard. She's destroying everything." The mediator frowned. "Ms. Leola, please, keep silence. Custody is based on the best interest of the minor, not on the customs or feelings of adults." She went rigid and said nothing else. At the end of the hearing, the mediator asked, "Is there any possibility that you reach an agreement? If not, the court will proceed to issue a judgment based on the current file." Kenyatta turned to me with tired eyes. "Aziza, can you give me another chance? I'll change, I swear." I looked at the man who was once my husband, seeing his decadence, the ruins of a destroyed family. "Kenyatta, I think you love Cairo, but loving him isn't enough if you don't know how to protect him." I remembered Cairo's face hugging me crying, his question of whether I was going to abandon him, his nights of fear from the shouting. I took a deep breath. "No agreement. I request the court issue a judgment." Kenyatta froze with red eyes. "Aziza, do you really want to take my son away? I want to return my son to a safe place." Lawyer Thaddeus put his hand on my shoulder to reassure me. The mediator ended the hearing. We left the room. In the hallway, Kenyatta ran after me. "Aziza, please don't do this." His voice almost broke. I took a step back, maintaining distance. "Kenyatta, I'm not your enemy, but I'm his mother, and I will choose what is best for my son." He covered his face with his hands. "I didn't think things would end like this." "Kenyatta, things haven't ended like this by chance. It's the result of many bad decisions of yours." He looked up with shattered eyes. "Losing you was my fault, but I don't want to lose my son." For the first time, I felt a little pity, but just a little. The court will decide based on Cairo's interest, not on your feelings or mine. I turned around and walked away, without knowing if behind me, Kenyatta clung to his mother or if Miss Leola blamed me again. I only heard the rain falling on the pavement, breaking like the sound of a broken family. That night I picked up Cairo and we had dinner together. While he ate, he told me things about class, happier than other days. "Mama, my friend asked me why I smile so much. I told him it's because last night I slept really well." I looked at him almost crying. "Well, tonight we'll sleep well again." Cairo smiled from ear to ear. "I love sleeping at your house." I pulled him close and kissed his forehead. In that hug, I saw clearly the future I was choosing, a difficult future, but much brighter than the past. I told myself that, however difficult the trial was, I would fight to the end, because my son deserved to live in peace. That night, after the first conciliation hearing, when Cairo was already asleep, I sat alone in the living room under the soft yellow light of my small apartment. The silence was absolute, as if the whole world held its breath waiting for the next storm, and I knew the storm would arrive. Kenyatta never gave up easily, especially when his pride was at stake. Close to 10 at night, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated a few seconds and answered. "Ms. Aziza." A man's voice sounded a bit hoarse. "It's Booker, the neighbor next door to Kenyatta." I sat up immediately. "Why are you calling? Excuse me for bothering you at this hour, but I think you should know. This afternoon, after you came back from the court, there was a huge scene at Kenyatta's house. They argued very loudly. I heard the boy crying for a long time." I squeezed the phone so hard my palm hurt. "Did something happen to Cairo? Did you hear any hits?" No, there were no hits, but I clearly heard Kenyatta breaking things, that Lanisha was shouting that she didn't want to take care of another woman's son. You should be careful. I don't think this situation is good for the child." I thanked Booker with a trembling voice. Hanging up, tears sprang forth. I wasn't crying from fear, but from grief for my son, an 8-year-old boy trapped in the middle of the storm of 2 adults without shelter. I entered Cairo's room. He was curled up, hugging the teddy bear I had bought him. From time to time his lips moved as if he were dreaming. I tucked him in well and sat beside him for a long time. That night I couldn't sleep. All the fears, all the memories of the days of resignation in my marriage returned, but this time they didn't weaken me. They made me stronger, because I understood that an adult's pain can be endured, but a child's cannot. The next morning, just as I had finished brushing my teeth, Kenyatta called. "Aziza, you have to listen to me." His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't slept all night. "I'm very busy. If it's not about our son, don't call me anymore." "Of course it's about him. Do you want to hurt him more?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. "Kenyatta, is it you who is hurting him?" There was a silence of a few seconds on the other end. Then Kenyatta said with a deep voice, but full of anger, "If you insist on taking custody from me, I'll do everything possible to prevent it." I knew it was a threat, but I also knew I was no longer the silent and submissive woman from before. "Kenyatta, I'm not afraid anymore. I have proof, the teacher's testimony, the psychologist's reports. If you want to go to the end, I will too. But the one who will lose the most won't be you or me. It will be Cairo. Think about it." I hung up. For the first time in many years, I felt my voice had the coldness and firmness of steel. That afternoon, Ms. Rainey called me to the school. Cairo was in the guidance room, hugging a cushion with red eyes. "Cairo told me that last night at his father's house, they argued again," she said in a low voice. I approached. "Cairo, did something happen again?" Cairo looked up, his bright eyes about to cry. "Mama, Daddy said that because of me, people look down on him. Ms. Lanisha said I'm a nuisance. I'm a burden, Mama." I froze. A sharp pain went through my heart as if an invisible hand squeezed it. "Cairo." I knelt in front of him with a lump in my throat. "You are the best thing that has happened to me in life. You will never be a burden. Never." Cairo bit his lip hard and then threw himself on me, crying inconsolably. I held him in my arms, and in that moment I understood more than ever that the real battle wasn't for custody, but to protect his little soul from more wounds. That night, taking Cairo home, I decided to speak seriously with him in a way a child could understand. Cairo, listen to me. I took his hand, small but trembling. What us adults are doing is to find the best place for you. Nobody hates you. You aren't to blame for anything. You just have to say what you really want. Cairo looked up. His voice was a whisper. I want to live with Mama. Then say that. Don't be afraid of anyone. I'll always be here. He smiled, a weak but warm smile. I know. A week later, Kenyatta appeared unexpectedly at my job. He was in the lobby looking haggard, red eyes and slumped shoulders, as if he had lost the most important thing in his life. Seeing me, he ran toward me. Aziza, please give me another chance. Don't separate me from my son. I stood firm without dodging him. Kenyatta, I'm not separating you from your son. I just want him to live where he should. I can change. I'll try. Just withdraw the lawsuit. I looked at him for a long time, the man who once made me believe marriage was a refuge and who then taught me that if a woman doesn't stand on her own 2 feet, nobody will save her. Kenyatta, you can't change because you don't recognize your mistakes. He shook his head repeatedly, desperate. I know I messed up. I beg you. You know the consequences, but not the mistake, which is different. I said that phrase with a strange calm. Kenyatta stood there as if he had just heard a sentence. But I am not his judge. I am only Cairo's mother, and Cairo needs me stronger than ever. That night Cairo slept beside me, turned and hugged me as if fearing I would disappear. I stroked his hair with a tender heart. Sleep, Cairo. I'm here. Mama, if I live with you, can we plant a pot of flowers in the entrance? I want to have a house for the 2 of us. I got emotional. Of course. What flowers do you want to plant? Cairo thought a moment and then whispered, White daisies. I like them. I kissed his forehead, and for the first time in many months, the future didn't seem so dark. It was simple. A small house with a pot of white daisies in the entrance, with a child's laughter, and the peace we both had achieved. The trial was approaching. The more unstable Kenyatta was, the calmer I was, because finally I had understood the most important thing. A mother, when she rises to protect her son, is invincible. The morning of the final hearing, a week before, I received a message from lawyer Thaddeus. Aziza, Kenyatta's side just presented an opposition brief requesting a psychological evaluation to prove that Cairo isn't as affected as you claim. I left the phone on the table and stood still a moment. I knew this day would come. When a man sees himself cornered, he clings to anything to keep the only thing that makes him feel he is a good father. But only a few seconds later, a strange calm invaded me. I was no longer afraid. The truth is the truth. It doesn't need to be hidden. In the afternoon, I picked up Cairo from school. Seeing me, he ran to hug me with a face more radiant than previous days. Mama, today the teacher congratulated me for behaving well. I stroked his head. Well, tonight I reward you with some pudding. Cairo smiled from ear to ear, but getting in the car he hesitated and asked, Mama, is Daddy still mad at me? I turned to look at him. No, Cairo, you haven't done anything wrong. But Daddy says if I stay with you, he'll look bad to the family. I froze, an adult burden on the shoulders of an 8-year-old child. I took his hand and said slowly, Cairo, what adults cause, adults have to assume. You just have to say where you want to live. It's not about looking bad or making anyone sad. You just have to be true to your heart. Cairo stayed silent a moment and then whispered, My heart wants to be with Mama. I kissed his forehead, wishing the court could hear the true voice of a child. At night, I received a call from neighbor Booker, the one who had warned me of the problems at Kenyatta's house. Miss Aziza, tonight I heard screaming again, this time more serious. I heard them throwing furniture, and I think the child was there. I jumped up. Today it was his father's turn to pick him up. Yes, exactly. I saw him arrive with him around 6. It's already 8 and there's still no peace. I think you should know. I thanked him and called Kenyatta immediately. He didn't answer. I called a second time. He didn't answer. The third time, finally someone answered. But it wasn't Kenyatta. It was Lanisha's voice, sour and angry. "What are you calling for at this hour?" "I need to speak to my son." "It's none of your business." "Put Kenyatta on," I said firmly. I heard a shout in the distance. "Give it here." Kenyatta snatched the phone. Snatched. "Aziza, what's up?" "Where is Cairo?" "In his room." "What's happening in your house that the neighbors are calling me?" "Just a little argument with Lanisha. An argument with broken furniture." I squeezed the phone hard. "Kenyatta, open the door. I'm coming over." "No, don't exaggerate." He hung up. I didn't doubt a second. I grabbed my jacket and drove directly to the old building. My heart beat fast. Not from anger, but from worry for the child trapped between two adults who had lost control. When I arrived at the 3rd floor, the door to Kenyatta's house was ajar, the lights off, only a little light from the hallway slipped inside. I called out, "Kenyatta, it's me." Nobody answered. I pushed the door gently. It opened wide, as if nobody cared to close it. The house was messy. A chair overturned, broken plates on the floor, stains of red wine like dried blood. I entered feeling a chill. "Cairo, where are you?" In a corner of the room, I saw a small figure curled up, hugging his knees, shaking. Cairo looked up, seeing me, and ran to my arms immediately. "Mama, I'm scared. Mama, I'm so scared." I hugged him as tight as if I could protect him from all storms. Kenyatta came out of the kitchen pale, smelling strongly of alcohol. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't hold back anymore. "Look at your house. Is this a place for a child to live?" Kenyatta staggered. His voice broke. "Tonight was just an accident." "You are turning a child into an involuntary witness of your own sinking," Lanisha shouted from the room. "I can't take it anymore. This kid is a nuisance, always crying. I can't live like this." Cairo, terrified, hid his face in my chest. I knew it was enough. I didn't need more proof. I got up, holding Cairo in my arms. "Kenyatta, I'm taking the boy, and from now on, unless the judge decides, you won't be left alone with him." Kenyatta ran toward me. "You can't take him. He's my son." I looked at him for a long time clearly. "Nobody is taking your son away. You lost him yourself." He stood paralyzed like a statue, with red eyes, unable to say anything else. I took Cairo out of that chaotic house. Every step was firm, as if someone had put roots under my feet. There were no more doubts. There was no more compassion. That night, arriving at my apartment, Cairo was still shaking in my arms. I hugged him until his breathing calmed and his tears dried on his cheeks. He said in his sleep, "Mama, don't leave me." I stroked his hair and answered in a whisper, "Firm as a rock, I'll never leave you." And that same night, I called lawyer Thaddeus. "Thaddeus, I want to add new evidence about the dangerous environment at his father's house. I want to request the court for an urgent precautionary measure, granting me temporary custody before the trial." The lawyer kept silent a few seconds and then said, "Aziza, this evidence is very solid. We'll do it tomorrow first thing." I looked at Cairo asleep, his little hand still clutching my clothes without letting go. And I knew I would win this battle, not to beat Kenyatta, but to protect an innocent child. The next morning, I took Cairo to school early. He was still a little scared, eyes puffy from crying at night, but he held my hand very tightly, as if fearing if he let go, everything would crumble again. When Cairo entered class, he turned to look at me, his look still anxious, but less terrified. I smiled to reassure him, and then left. Immediately after, I went to lawyer Thaddeus's office. He already had the written request for urgent precautionary measures prepared, asking the court to temporarily grant me custody of Cairo until the main trial was held. "Aziza, the lawyer said with a clear voice. "With the evidence you provided last night, it is very likely the court accepts the precautionary measures, but prepare yourself. Kenyatta's side will react very strongly." I nodded. I no longer feared Kenyatta's reaction. What I feared most was my son having to live in chaos, and I had already avoided that. The writ was filed that same morning. The court set a quick hearing for the end of the day. In the afternoon, I picked up Cairo. He ran to hug me softly, but with total trust. "Mama, tonight I sleep at our house again, right?" I smiled. "Yes, you stay with me." Cairo was so happy he did a little jump and said, "Mama, I drew this for you." He gave me a paper with a scribbled drawing. In it were the two of us in front of our small apartment, and next to it, a pot of white daisies. I looked at it with a shrinking heart. A child's world is so simple, it turns out cruel. He only needs a quiet place to sleep, someone to hug him when he's scared, and a pot of flowers to believe in tomorrow. Close to 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number from the court. "Ms. Aziza Garcia, the court wants to meet with you and Mr. Kenyatta in an urgent hearing before making a decision." I left Cairo with a neighbor and ran to the court. Kenyatta was already in the hallway with a wrinkled shirt and bloodshot eyes. He looked at me as if he wanted to say something, but bit his lip and kept silent. We were invited into the room. The judge, a woman of about 50, with a severe but warm gaze, looked directly at the file. "The court has examined the documentation provided by Ms. Aziza last night, with the neighbor's confirmation, images of the place, and the child's psychological report." Kenyatta jumped up. "Your Honor, it was just a couple's argument. The boy just got a little scared." The judge raised her hand for silence. "Mr. Kenyatta, the court is not based on feelings. It is based on evidence. And the evidence shows that the child's current living environment is unstable, with elements of psychological violence, which poses a risk of long-term sequelae." Kenyatta opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. I looked at my hands to hide my emotions. I wasn't happy, nor victorious, nor satisfied. I only felt pity for my son, for a child who had had to endure more than his childhood allowed. The judge continued, "The court will issue a precautionary measure temporarily awarding guardianship and custody of the minor Cairo to his mother, Ms. Aziza Garcia, until the final sentence is issued." Kenyatta stood petrified. I felt as if I could finally breathe after months drowning. However, the judge looked at me. "Ms. Aziza, you must facilitate Mr. Kenyatta visiting his son at an appropriate time with supervision if necessary." I nodded immediately. "Your Honor, I will never forbid Kenyatta from seeing his son. I just want him to be safe." Kenyatta sat pale. I saw panic, regret, and something like bitterness in his eyes, but I didn't feel pity anymore. I had gotten over it a long time ago. Leaving the room, Kenyatta followed me. "Aziza, don't do this. Last night I just got angry. You know it. I love Cairo more than anything." I stopped and looked at him calmly. "Kenyatta, you don't love a child with words. You love him by creating a place where he isn't afraid at night." He stayed silent with red eyes. "I know I messed up. I lost my family. I lost you, and now my son too. What do I do, Aziza?" I said in a low voice, but firm. "Kenyatta, you haven't lost your son. He still has a father. But if you want to keep that role, first you have to save yourself. Quit the alcohol. Stop the verbal violence. Stop letting a third person influence your son's upbringing." He lowered his head. His voice broke. "I'll try." I didn't answer because I didn't need promises anymore. I needed facts. That night, when I took Cairo to the grocery store to buy food, he took my hand, walking very happily. "Mama, today you look prettier than ever." I laughed. "Why prettier?" "Because you're strong. You look like a superhero." I stopped a moment. Who would have said? An 8-year-old boy saw something I myself hadn't seen in me for years. I was strong, and not to beat anyone, but to protect a small world called Cairo. Arriving home, Cairo took the morning drawing and gave it to me. "Mama, I added something else. Look, Besides the two of us and the pot of daisies, now there was a sun above and a phrase with spelling mistakes that made me cry, "The house of the two." I hugged him, hiding my face in his hair to hide the tears. Yes, Cairo, the house of the two. And I knew that even if the trial ahead was long, the most important battle, that of my son's safety, I had already won. 3 days after the court granted me temporary custody of Cairo, the atmosphere in our small apartment became strangely warm. Cairo slept through the night until morning, without startles, without crying, without fear of screams. Sometimes I heard him laughing while playing alone with his Legos, a laugh I hadn't heard in months. But I understood this calm was only a respite before the next storm. The main trial was approaching, and undoubtedly, Kenyatta's side wouldn't sit idly by. One morning, while preparing to take Cairo to school, the phone rang. It was Ms. Rainey. "Ms. Aziza, this morning Cairo arrived at class a little tense. He asked me if the judge changes her mind, if he will have to go back to his father's house. I reassured him, but he's still worried." I sighed. "Please watch him. His mood is very fragile." "Yes, honestly, it makes me very sad to see him like this. Be strong." I thanked her and left with Cairo. During the way, I tried to talk to him very softly. "Cairo, you don't have to worry about those things. The judge will ask you who you want to live with. You just have to tell the truth." Cairo stayed silent a moment and then asked, "If I say I want to live with Mama, will Daddy get sad?" I stroked his head. "Sadness is something us adults have to overcome. You just have to live where you feel safe." Cairo nodded slightly, but in his look there was something that hurt me. A fear that every child who has lived through the breakup of his family carries with him like an invisible scar. At night, while preparing dinner, I heard hurried knocks on the door. Opening it, I saw Kenyatta. His shirt smelled of alcohol, but his eyes were clearer than the last times. "Aziza, I want to see the boy." I put myself on guard. "Kenyatta, today isn't a visitation day." "Just a few minutes, please." His voice trembled. I looked into his eyes and saw his anxiety mixed with desperation, but I maintained distance. "Okay, but wait at the door. The boy just got out of the shower." Cairo came out running, and seeing Kenyatta, stopped clinging to my clothes tightly. Kenyatta crouched down. His voice was a whisper, like an apology. "Cairo, Daddy just wanted to know if you're okay." Cairo hid behind me without saying anything. Kenyatta, seeing the scene, reddened. "Aziza, tell the boy his father loves him. He looks at me as if I were a stranger." I took a deep breath. "Kenyatta, the boy doesn't see you as a stranger. He's just scared. And for him to stop being scared, you have to change for real." "I'm trying. I've gone 3 days without drinking, and I broke up with Lanisha." I was surprised. "What did you say?" Kenyatta lowered his head, couldn't handle the pressure. "She left." Cairo behind me asked in a low voice, "Mama, does Ms. Lanisha not live at Daddy's house anymore?" I stroked his head. "Don't worry, Cairo. That's an adult thing." Kenyatta clasped his hands as if begging. "Aziza, give me another chance. I'll fix everything. I'll create a better environment for the child. Don't take custody from me." I looked at him. This man I once loved and trusted, now trembling before me like someone on the edge of an abyss. But I couldn't give in, because every time I wavered, my son paid the price. "Kenyatta, you have to change for your son, not for the judge. If you really change, Cairo will notice. But as for custody, I won't take a step back." Kenyatta hit the doorframe with a choked voice. "I don't want to lose my son." I closed the door gently before his uncontrolled emotions dragged Cairo. The next night, Lawyer Thaddeus sent me a message. "Kenyatta's side has hired a new lawyer. They are gathering evidence to prove that you obstruct the visitation schedule." I replied calmly, "I don't obstruct it. Everything is done according to the schedule set by the judge." "Okay, I'll handle that, but prepare yourself. They'll focus on your income, on the time you dedicate to your son, and even on the guilt of the divorce." I sat with a heavy heart, but a clear mind. "Thaddeus, I'm not afraid. I have the truth, and I have my son," he replied with a short phrase. "Correct. And we have a good chance." Sunday, I took Cairo to the park. The weather was good, a soft breeze. Cairo ran from one side to another with an ice cream in his hand, turning from time to make sure I was still there. "Cairo, come, I want to talk to you." He ran toward me with his face flushed by the sun. "Are you having a good time?" "Yes, I have a really good time with Mama." Cairo smiled. His eyes shone. I sat next to him. "Cairo, soon you'll have to speak with the judge. She'll ask you some questions. You just have to tell the truth. Don't be afraid of anyone." Cairo tilted his head. "Is the judge like the teacher?" I laughed softly. "She's also kind, but a little more serious." "Then I'll tell the truth." Cairo nodded. "I want to live with Mama because our house is quiet. There are no screams." That phrase pierced my heart. An 8-year-old boy using the word quiet to describe his home, something a child shouldn't have to understand. I hugged him tight. "Cairo, I promise you, whatever the result, I will protect you." Cairo rested his head on my shoulder and whispered, "I trust you." That night, tucking Cairo in, he looked at me and asked, "Mama, if Daddy changes, can I still see him?" I smiled. "Of course, I will never forbid you from seeing your father, as long as you feel safe." "Well, tomorrow I'll add a drawing of Daddy to my picture." I hesitated a few seconds, but then nodded. "Sure, if you want, do it." Cairo wrapped his arms around my neck and said in a low voice, "I just want Daddy to be good again, like when I was little." I stroked his hair, feeling an invisible sorrow. Adults' wounds can last, but children sleep in the heart waiting to hurt one day, and I won't let it hurt him anymore. That night, I called Lawyer Thaddeus with a firm voice. "Thaddeus, I'm ready for everything. In the trial, I'll tell everything. No beating around the bush, no fear." Thaddeus replied, "That is the spirit of a mother." I looked at Cairo, asleep beside me, his calm face like a little angel's. I took his hand gently. A woman can be weak before everything, but when she faces a storm to protect her son, she becomes invincible. The trial was approaching. Everything was tightening, but my heart was firmer than ever. The trial was held on a Monday morning. The sky was blue, but the wind was cold, as if the sky itself wanted to test the endurance of those entering the room that day. I entered the courthouse holding my son's hand, following Lawyer Thaddeus's directions. In the other hand, the boy carried his teddy bear, an object that helped him calm down when he was nervous. He squeezed it tight, looking at me from time to make sure I wasn't leaving. Kenyatta was already there. He wore a white shirt, but his face was haggard, clearly marked by sleepless nights. Seeing Cairo, his look was moved, a mixture of love, pain, and helplessness. I crouched down and whispered to the boy, "Cairo, everything is going to be fine. Mama is here." He nodded. His little shoulders trembled slightly, but his eyes no longer reflected the fear from before. In the courtroom, the judge left the file on the table, looked at both parties and said, "Today, the court will hear the allegations of the parties regarding the custody of the minor Cairo. First, Ms. Aziza Garcia." I stood up without trembling. I was no longer the woman from a year ago who got scared just hearing Kenyatta's voice. "Your Honor," I said slowly, "I request exclusive custody of my son Cairo because the living environment with Mr. Kenyatta is unstable. The child has shown symptoms of stress, anxiety, and prolonged insomnia. All of this is documented by his teacher and the psychologist. I have stable income, a quiet home, and since living with me, his condition has improved notably." I presented the evidence, and the judge examined it with attention. It was Kenyatta's turn. He stood up with a trembling voice. "I admit I have made mistakes lately, but I love my son for real. I've quit alcohol. I've broken up with Lanisha. I'm trying to rebuild my life. I don't want to lose my son." The judge looked at him. "Mr. Kenyatta, loving your son is good, but what the court considers is the best interest of the minor, not the feelings of the adults." Kenyatta lowered his head in silence. Next, the judge called Cairo. I accompanied him. The boy trembled a little, but his little hand sought mine like an anchor. The judge smiled slightly with a warm voice. "What is your name?" "My name is Cairo." "How old are you?" 8. "Cairo, who would you like to live with?" The whole room fell silent, as if the air had frozen. I clearly heard my heartbeats. Cairo looked up at the judge, then looked at me, and finally at Kenyatta. He took a deep breath, like an adult gathering courage. "I want to live with my mama." The judge continued. "Why do you want to live with your mama?" Cairo squeezed his teddy bear. His voice was low but clear. "Because at my mama's house I'm not scared. My mama doesn't yell at me. She hugs me when I cry and I sleep well. My mama's house is very quiet. I want to stay there forever." Hearing those words, Kenyatta collapsed as if he had broken inside. I couldn't hold back the tears, not of joy, but of sorrow. Sorrow for my son, who had to use an adult's words to express something the court itself should have seen. The judge examined the file for a good while, then put down the pen and said with a clear voice, "After considering the current living environment, the psychological evidence, the economic capacity and the dedication time, as well as the desire of the minor, the court decides to award exclusive custody of the minor Cairo to his mother, Ms. Aziza Garcia. Mr. Kenyatta will have the right to a visitation schedule at a fixed time, 3 times a week, with supervision during the first 2 months." Kenyatta stood petrified. I felt as if my legs softened with relief, not for winning or losing, but because from now on my son would live in the peace he deserved. Cairo turned to me and asked in a low voice, "Mama, am I going to stay with you?" I hugged him. "Yes, Cairo, you stay with me." He broke down crying, but from relief, for having finally freed himself from the nightmare nights. Leaving the room, Kenyatta called me. There was no longer anger or shouting, only the tiredness of a man who knows he has lost the most valuable thing. "Aziza, I know this is the result I deserve, but I ask you not to push me out of the boy's life." I looked at him for a long time. "Kenyatta, a child always needs his father, but he needs a father who knows how to love him well. If you take care of yourself, the boy will come back to you." He nodded with red eyes and said in a very low voice, "Thank you at least for letting me be his father." I said nothing else. I took Cairo by the hand and left the court. The afternoon sun illuminated us like erasing the dark months. That night, arriving home, Cairo left his teddy bear on the table and ran to hug me. "Mama, can we plant the white daisies now?" I laughed through tears. "Of course, tomorrow I'll buy the soil and the pot. We'll plant them both." "Mama!" Cairo looked up. "Now our house is a real house." I hugged him tight, as if I wanted to protect the whole world in my arms. Yes, starting today, the house of the two is a real house. On the balcony, a soft breeze brought the smell of sunset. In my heart, a chapter closed. The pain, the tears, the sleepless nights, all to achieve one single thing: peace for my son. And I understood something that for years I hadn't wanted to admit. A normal mother, when she loves her son, can be stronger than any storm. Maybe I never forgot the moment when Cairo took my hand tightly at the doors of the court and said with a trembling voice, "Mama, from now on, I stay with you." That question was for me like a door closing late, but opening a new home full of light. Suddenly I realized that in all the battles of adults, the most terrifying thing isn't winning or losing, but inadvertently letting a child carry the broken pieces that don't belong to him. Since Cairo lives with me, our small apartment seems warmer. He sleeps through the night until morning, without startles, without crying, without fear of screams. Every afternoon, returning from work, I find him studying by the window next to the pot of freshly bloomed daisies. They are small moments, but they make me believe I have chosen well. I have chosen my son, peace, the most difficult path, but the most human of my life. Life has taught me a great lesson. The strongest mother is not the one who knows how to sacrifice herself best, but the one who knows how to stand up in time to protect her son from what is wrong. Sometimes giving up a marriage isn't a failure, but the only way to save a child's childhood. We can endure, we can resign ourselves, we can cry in silence. But when our son cries, a mother must become an unbreakable shield. If anyone is going through a difficult stage like the one I lived, please remember that there is no court more important than that of your son's heart. As long as he feels safe, feels loved, all a mother's effort will have been worth it. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.